All right, everybody, we're back on CSP, and we have with us today one of my favorite guests. He's actually been with us. This is his third appearance. He's the author of Merciful Flush, Results May Vary, The Ball Washer, Homo Says Whaticus, The Trembling Fist, and his newest book, The Song Between Her Legs, the one and only Lance Manion. How are you doing, Lance?
Outstanding. Yourself?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. It's always great talking to you, catching up a little bit.
Well, I know it's been a while.
Dude, it has. This is actually... I want to say this is episode 63, and I think the last time you were on was episode 24.
Wow.
It's been over a year.
Time goes so fast.
It sure does, man. I saw that this book has released now, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about it. I mean, The Song Between Her Legs, like, I read on your blog that you wanted this book to just scream self-published.
Yeah, it seems like... each book now, I put less and less effort into, trying to pretend that it's a major bestseller release. So I even went with a cover that instead of just, what I usually do is I draw it out and then I send it to somebody who actually will turn it into a cover. I just kept the drawing that I did, didn't edit it, and threw it on the front, and it could be the worst cover of any book ever published.
I think, from an artistic standpoint, it's very crudely drawn, but I think it's pretty cool looking. In fact, it looks like it's just a stick figure drawn on like the front of a notebook, basically.
It's just that simple. The idea. I love the idea of making the title the stick figure's legs. Yeah. So after that, I was just like, oh, that'll do.
And it looks great, man. And for anybody that, let alone wants to read it, wants to check out the cover, go to lancemanion.com, and the dude's giving it away for free ebook download.
Yeah, I did that with the Ball Washer, and instead of dozens and dozens of downloads when people paid for it, now it's thousands and thousands. So I think in the long run, that's probably a better approach for an unknown author than pretend that I have teeming masses waiting to spend good money.
And I feel like really it kind of fits a theme that sort of goes along with the book too. I mean, not just the cover, but also a lot of the stories that are referenced in it, and even the blog entry that I was reading on your website, Viva la Revolucion.
Yeah, I like for the Spanish readers.
Yeah, I like to add a little bit of French into my Spanish actually as well. So I hit the Spanish words with a little French flair to it.
Well, I'm glad you read it. The whole principle behind that blog was supporting the self-published movement. I think what you see now is it's no longer that scarlet letter. Although I do get some reviewers who return, an email saying that they don't review self-published stuff. So, of course, then I alienate them forever by, comparing them to dinosaurs and wishing bad things upon them. But, the idea now that it is easy to get published and it is easy to find an audience now. And I don't want to run from that anymore and pretend to be something, that I'm not.
And for publishers to say that they don't review like self-published works, I mean, don't you think that that's just them being afraid? They just want to make a bunch of money and they don't want to cost themselves anything? Wouldn't you say that's kind of what's going on there?
Oh, absolutely. They're protecting their ass. It's you've got this big industry that churns out garbage, but it scares them. I think we even mentioned back in the 20s episodes, that podcasters are terrifying radio stations, and the music industry is terrified of the ability for bands to get on YouTube and present their music. The corporate interests eventually are no longer going to be served. You're going to have a lot of people selling a lot of low numbers instead of one person selling 1 million. And to me, that's a very healthy thing. To them, that's death, because then they can't make any money on it.
It is crazy, really, like thinking about the age that we live in now, the fact that a kid on YouTube, if he's got hits, he's got power, really, and he can make the big businesses look shitty. And I mean, it's people telling the truth now. It's finally the truth has come out.
Yeah, I think the genie is out of the bottle. The big fear I have is though that they're going to impose the rules on us where people will really, value their work based on the number of downloads or hits or listeners, as opposed to just enjoying the process of creation. Once it's done, that is in and of itself a great thing. Whether anybody downloads my books or not, I could care less. The act of creation, pretending I'm an author, posting it out there and then having these wild fantasies of popularity, that's all it needs to do. I'm always telling people to self-publish, start podcasts, viva la revolution, but don't get dragged down by, being measured by other people. That's what, the industry wants to say. They want to have bestsellers and losers as opposed to thousands and thousands of people communicating.
And I couldn't agree more. And if you get into it for fame and glory and for wanting a bunch of money, you're pretty much dead in the water. You really have to, because even people that are putting out a heartfelt, product, they're still going to get haters. It's still going to happen. I know a lot of people that start a podcast, they get people like shitting all over them and then they just stop because they can't take it.
They should revel in that, because the people who are shitting on them, those are the unhappy people, and they're going to shit on anything, especially if you start to get successful. Like, obviously you guys are doing real well. People are starting to listen, starting to be, tune in. So, of course, you're going to have an avalanche of shit from people who are envious of that, who didn't start their own podcasts, or, maybe their podcast sucks. So they're going to do everything they can to diminish your enjoyment. And that's just the worst.
Well, and it always kind of cracked me up, too, whenever you're listening to, like, terrestrial radio, and they'll say something shitty about, podcasts, or even, like, even like satellite radio, just something that is not the normal tune into a radio and listen to what we play. I love the fact that it's almost like they're taking them to that level. They're just saying, hey, this is up here with us, but it's shitty, so you don't have to listen to it. It's like you can tell they're scared.
Oh, and the arrogance, sitting there saying, oh, they're doing a podcast out of their basement, without realizing that some of the best conversations I ever had were in basements. That's where people are talking, and for them to be scared of that is probably smart. For them to shit all over it in the long term, I think podcasts are going to have a long memory when it comes time for all these bad DJs, trying to start their own podcasts in a few years.
Oh, right. And then you have the podcast moguls that are out there right now. That's just companies that are grabbing celebrities that you kind of think, hey, I might like to hear what they say. Some of them not so much, but they put them all in one big corral, and then they do all the legwork, and then they release these podcasts. That's kind of what I'm seeing now.
Well, because like you said, it's all dollars, and that's not where any of this comes from. Nobody's writing obscure books or doing podcasts to get rich and famous. We're just doing it because, that's what we enjoy doing. So you get these corporate people, and one of the stories in my book is I had called for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to be burnt to the ground.
I was actually going to bring that up to you. That was one of the ones I read, and it said right in, you're maybe into the first paragraph, and it says, I'm calling for everyone to burn down the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's everything I hate about, music and the corporate entities that control it. It's like the Anarchy Club. Drives me crazy, but it's the same type of thing. Untalented bean counters trying to control something. And the fact that, bands buy into this bullshit drives me, it's really disappointing. Rock and roll is supposed to be about rebellion, and here you are slapping it on lunch pails and having these, jam sessions on HBO. To me, it's just pathetic. I'm waiting for somebody to tell them to go stick it, instead of accepting the invite and sitting on this stage and, being turned into a bust somewhere in Cleveland. It's sad.
And I think, a lot of the people that are just kind of biting their lip and accepting it, acting like it's something prestigious, they're people that are worried about their brand. But I don't know if you watched, I watched the induction ceremony last year, and I think it was last year that Rush finally made it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame after like 40 plus years of being an awesome band. Did you see that?
No, I'm not a big fan of that. Although okay. Rush, I should have tuned in and given them the due, but after 40 years, they should have told them to stick it.
Well, that's pretty much what happened. Alex Leifson, the guitar player, it was obvious that there was a little bit of bad blood there, because they're like, come on, guys, like, you're going to let all these other bands in before Rush. Well, Alex Leifson gets up there, and his acceptance speech is literally just saying blah, 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 blah for 10 minutes. And then he left the stage.
Yeah, who are they to let anybody in? Like to sit there and try to judge rock and roll. It's the same thing. I love garage rock. I love, unknown bands. There's a radio station in Princeton, WPRB, that I just can't listen to enough. And none of those bands are ever going in any rock and roll Hall of Fame, but to me, that's the vibe that's music's supposed to have.
You know, you don't even want to get me started on music right now. Music is such a disappointment. What the mainstream music is right now that people are trying to shove down your throat, it's just a fucking joke.
It's literally the whore of the month club. You know, you get some, 18 or 19-year-old girl, make her famous, and then trash her a few years later. You know, ride that roller coaster again and again. And the music itself is so bad. It's unlistenable, but it sells, tens of millions of copies.
It's definitely over my head. It makes me feel like, I'm an old guy that just doesn't get it, but I'm 25 years old, man. I should be like in the peak of like what's coming at me right now, but I'm trying to duck and listen to, rock and roll from like the 70s and 80s.
And that's why, my biggest point to all of this is really to try to inspire other people to do it. I look at like podcasts like you and writers like me. We're like the old NFL players. In 20 years, podcasts are going to be rampant. Self-published authors are going to be making, thousands and millions of dollars. And we're going to be the ones who didn't get paid and have back injuries and, can't hold our children with our gnarled hands. That's where it's going. And I just don't want anybody who's thinking about doing a podcast or writing a book to be dissuaded by, corporate interests. Put it out, write it down, get it out. If only 5 people read it, you've added your drop of water in the ocean of culture.
I just have a picture in my head of like people like, you and I and even Ty were being interviewed in documentaries about, the gold rush of the podcast independent writer scene, from 2014. And, everybody's looking at us kind of sadly because we're the ones that didn't make the money, but we're still here talking about it. I just have this envision.
Yeah, they'll shuffle us out, at award ceremonies and stick us back in the closet.
Well, while we're on the topic here a little bit, I kind of wanted to ask if you had any opinion on this. There's something going on in the podcast community about this patent troll. Have you heard anything about this?
Just rumblings, but, you can definitely clarify it for me.
Well, it's these, there's people that buy up these patents, and it's for all kinds of shit, and they call them patent trolls, but there's one in particular that claims that they have the patent for putting out episodic audio files online, and they're trying to sue. They went for Adam Carolla because he was like the biggest podcast they could get a hold of, and they're basically suing him for the right to own podcasting, and any podcaster, if they win this lawsuit, any podcaster is going to have to pretty much pay dues to this patent owner. So everybody's kind of fighting this fight right now.
I mean, that just shows how horrible people are. This person trying to make money off of the efforts of other people. I mean, it really is disgusting.
Oh, and it's not even like people that are, podcasting that are putting their hearts into this and they're, I'm spending money out of my pocket. I'm not making any money from this. And not only is it podcasters, but how many hundreds of millions of people are getting enjoyment, at least from a podcast that they listen to for free? Why would somebody want to put the kibosh on that, man?
People suck. I mean, that must be the theme from today's conversation is people suck.
Yeah, well, the pre-conversation...
They're trying to patent exhaling. How do you patent, podcasting? Oh, you can inhale all you want. Just if you exhale, you have to give me $5.
Oh, man. Well, if somebody finds a way, that'll be next, dude. Guarantee it.
Yeah, I don't think I've written a book that didn't blast lawyers at one time or another. I can't help it. They drive me crazy.
Well, so going back to kind of how you said, that you decided this time you were just going to put the cover art out there and just leave it as it is. Would you say, like, at the beginning when you decided to first get into actually writing books and publishing them yourself, did you try to go towards, like, hey, maybe I can, be like a mainstream writer or something? Did you have, like, visions of that at first, or?
I think you'd be lying if you didn't say in the back of your head, I think everybody in the planet would love this. Well, the truth is, if I ever sold 1 million copies of the new book, the next day there would be riots outside bookstores as hundreds and thousands of people went to return the book. It took a couple books for me to realize, just how odd and stupid the stories are. The first 2 books I put out, I didn't even edit. I just put them out as is with all sorts of typographical errors and syntax was all over the place. The third book, The Ball Washer, I hired somebody to edit it. I hired somebody to do a cover. And there was that creeping feeling like, okay, this is going to be the big one. And then every book since has been a little less as I continue to put them out, but do less and less work as far as trying to appeal to the masses.
Well, and I think that's definitely added a charm to the books. And if I were to be walking through a bookstore and something that, if something was on the bookshelf that looked like it didn't have a lot of effort put into it, and it looked like it didn't go through everybody's hands in a publishing company, and it just looked like it was just the ramblings of a madman, that would kind of be something that would intrigue me, definitely.
REM had this song, and the guy's name eludes me, but it was basically this guy who wrote a book called something like Life and How to Live It, and he printed up 1,000 copies of it, and then he put it in his closet, and that's where they found them after he was dead. And there's just something very charming about that story. I haven't gone to that extreme, but, the next book I may just, print up and stick in my closet.
Oh, you definitely should, especially after your 6th book. It might be time to write one and just tuck it away somewhere.
Well, I think just for credibility, my next book I'm going to write is going to be my 10th book. And then if it catches on, I will go back and later write 7 through 9 and fill in the gaps.
Oh, yeah, it's sort of like a Star Wars Episode 1 type thing.
Yeah, because, when I put out the press releases and I, talk to folks like you and try to pitch them on having me come on, it always sounds better that, his 6th book as opposed to his first. So I'm like, maybe next time it'll be his 20th or 30th, and, then I can just walk right on to the Tonight Show.
That's fucking brilliant, man, because really it's just a number, and people are just like, oh my God, his 20th? Like, yeah, well, this is my 20th, Next one I'm gonna do my 19th, and then maybe my 12th after that, because that number sounds good.
Well, that's why I get contacted by these publicity guys who say it's easy to have a bestseller, to actually get that, in front of your book. You just have to release it like midnight, January 2nd. There's all these goofy, like, semantic things. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm going to fool somebody and think The Ball Washer was a bestseller. But, that's why you can't believe anything you read. When you see, best-selling author, that just means they spun it or they released it, at 1 in the morning, in Panama City somewhere to get into a technicality.
The whole system is flawed. Just say I was a publisher or something, and then you told me that, this is your 20th book. And I do the math, and I'm like, well, wait, I only see 6 books here. And you're like, yeah, but this is my number 20. I would kind of look at you, and I'd be like, okay, this is a creative dude. I think this is somebody that I maybe would want writing for my company.
Well, I like the fact in your email reply to me, you said that you liked the a good book, something like book should start with a good quote.
Oh, right off the bat, dude, that killed me.
And I thought, if somebody gets that, they're probably going to enjoy the book. I'm picturing 90% of people just not even, understanding the quote.
Well, I took down a couple of quotes that I like so far as I've been reading it. And if I could just read you just a couple of my favorite quotes so far. I really liked, a really smart frog is still not as smart as a really dumb raccoon.
Well, I don't want to offend the frog lovers in the audience, so that it was a pretty daring statement for me, given the rampant popularity of toads and frogs. But sometimes you have to take a stand.
Something that kind of touched my heart as well is this little quote. Being keenly aware of the subtleties of language, I quickly noticed that while my coach instructed the other players to play second base or play center field, I was always asked to go out to left field. I quickly vowed that I would go out there to the best of my ability as to not disappoint them.
That pretty much captures my athletic endeavors in one sentence. I was pushed towards the world of literature because I was horrible at every sport there was. Although proudly I will say I've never picked up a lacrosse stick. I just, that's where I draw the line.
So far, I am thoroughly enjoying the song Between Her Legs. I have it on my iPad here. I downloaded it as soon as I saw it was available, and I'm loving it. And I can't blow smoke up your ass and say that you're my favorite writer ever, because I can't even say I have a favorite writer, because it's more like whatever I'm in the mood to read. Like, that's my favorite writer at the time,
Well, and it's like songs. You can appreciate all sorts of styles, all sorts of musicianship. It's the same with literature. The only thing that bums me out is almost every time I'm just releasing a book, and it's a pain in the ass. You have to be sending it out and writing letters. While I'm doing it, I'm reading a book called The Confederacy of Dunces, which is so much better than my book. And I'm like, why can't I read a shitty book while I'm putting out a book? But no, I just stumbled into this book. I was laughing my ass off. I'm like, oh my God, he turned the phrase better than I ever did. And then I'll read a little further. I'm like, oh, that's so much wittier than I've ever been. Yeah. So I guess next book I'm going to try to find maybe I'll look for, Honey Boo Boo's tell-all book.
That's probably a better one, because even, hearing that some of these, musicians or actors that put out books, most of them will say, in fact, I've even heard stories, I think from Howard Stern, talking about, he wanted his book to be really good, and the publishing company was just like, hey man, as long as it's like 300 pages, I don't give a shit what's in between the two covers, Well,
that's, the best bit of advice I got, which really, confirmed how I wanted to move forward, was a literary agent replied to me and said, like the book, get famous doing something else, and then we can get you a book deal. And that was, she was basically saying that what's in the book is completely meaningless. They're looking for famous people who are writing a book, and then it doesn't matter what. So if I go murder somebody, or, if I get gang raped in a prison, and make the nightly news, boom, she will take my call. I could write the great American novel, and nobody's going to give me the time of day.
It's so fucked up, man. Like that, and that alone, there's not going to be any new, Stephen Kings or, any new awesome authors like that, because they're just looking to sell the books. They want something that's going to trend on Twitter, and Linda Hogan's going to write about Hulk Hogan's divorce, and
to know that she will sell more books in the first day than I do my entire career. That is, that's a sobering thing to internalize.
Well, like you said in your latest blog post, I do feel like it's all going to change. The barbarians are at the door, man. I could not agree more.
Well, you look at Stephen King's a good example, but you've got websites like Creepypasta now, where people are contributing, and there may not be somebody like Stephen King making $1 million, but there's some great stories there, and if you want to get the shit scared out of you, you can find something there. So, again, I think that in the long term, people will find their audience. If you want to find a book, you can find it now. And if you want to write a book, there are people that are probably looking for it.
That's really interesting, too, that you bring up the creepypasta thing, because a lot of people don't even think about that as just being, independent entertainment for free that's just coming from minds of kids in their basement, basically. But Ty and I have talked about a bunch of creepypastas on previous episodes, and I'll tell you what, man, there have been some creepypastas that have scared me way more than fucking reading Carrie or Cujo.
Yeah, and like you said, nobody's like caring about claiming responsibility. It's just everybody's contributing. I actually submitted one, and they put it on Crappypasta. Apparently they were not fans of Lance Manion's horror ability.
What was the premise behind the Lance Manion creepypasta?
It was, what the hell was the name of it? It was basically this guy who has lives in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, and he wakes up to find footsteps in the snow coming to his front door, but no footsteps leaving. So the long and the short of it was that he went to a website. It was the story was called the Deep Dark Web. It was in my actually, I think it's in this book.
It is. I saw that. I haven't read that one yet, but I have seen that one in the table of contents.
Basically him just going through the freaking out because he went to these websites that he shouldn't have gone to. Underneath the web, there's the dark web where all the sadists and freaks post stuff. So he started poking around there, and when he woke up the next morning, there were these footsteps to his door. And then, I won't ruin it for the millions of people who are scrambling to download it, but, he follows these footsteps and then has one of those, the end of The Shining type moments. Apparently it was pretty crappy. It wasn't creepy.
Well, it sounds interesting, because if you had written that in 1989, that would have been a straight-to-TV movie. You would have probably made, at least $500,000 off of it, and people would know the story.
Well, like you look at Stephen King, one of his books, The Night Shift, was a collection of short stories and was a huge motivator for me to realize, how poignant a short story can be, how much you can pack in if you let the reader imagine things for himself. And I think maybe there was 30 stories in there. There's got to be 15 movies out of that one book. If you look at the number of movies that came out of one collection of short stories, I think he took all of them from every other short story writer. That's why there's no other short stories being made into movies. That bastard stole them all.
Okay, so this being your sixth, going on your 20th book, do you find that you're kind of maybe where you want to be as an author at this point?
Oh, absolutely. I've got my little crowd of people that look forward to reading them, give me nice feedback, and that's all I'm aspiring to. It seems that the longer I do it, the less I'm trying to get out of it. I just enjoy it, Facebook is actually depressing me because they changed all the rules, trying to get money out of people who put their writer sites on Facebook. So now there's very few views, where it used to be I would post something and 1,000 people would see it. Now 50 people see it. So that's a little depressing, because for a while I had a really nice community and was talking to a lot of different people, and even wannabe writers that were asking for advice and stuff. But now Facebook's sort of going down the toilet. But I've done what I've wanted to do. Now it's just a matter of just cranking the same stuff out.
Yeah, Facebook kind of sucks now, and we kind of even stopped paying attention to uploading stuff on Facebook, because, that's a good place to post shit if, you want your Aunt Barb to like it and share it on her page. But it's just, it's not there, man. The people are not there. You got to go to other sites if you want to attract people that are going to be into whatever you're giving out.
Yeah, I'm still trying to find what that site is for me. I have friends that do really well with Tumblr. I've got people that have 1,000 Twitter followers, and I'm a dismal failure in both of those.
Yeah, Twitter. I think we're doing good with Twitter, but the thing is, you gotta be willing to put work into it. Like with you self-publishing your stuff, I'm sure that everything that gets done on the Lance Manion front is done by Lance Manion, and that's same with us over here. If whether it be somebody buying something from our little shitty store that we have set up, I'm licking the stamp, I'm kissing the envelope before I drop it in the mailbox. It doesn't go through anybody else's hands, man. You just gotta just go out there.
Definitely not fooling anybody. Like when I send my stuff out to reviewers, sometimes just as my own little joke, I'll have it come from Lance Manion Enterprises, and I'll start with referring to myself in the second person and then third person, and at the end it's back to me. So anybody reading it is like it's either a schizophrenic or he's doing this on purpose.
Oh, that's a good idea, man. I actually have my girlfriend sometimes, if it's regarding something, like if I'm having stickers printed and I need to call the company, I'll have my girlfriend call and say that she's our intern or something like that, just for fun.
Yeah, I haven't thought of that. And maybe I'll just, although my voice is high enough, I could probably pull it off anyway.
You could, or you could just hire a kid off the street maybe, and, just have them do it for a couple bucks.
With the first book, I printed up all these stickers, and I was going to hire kids to put them all over train stations and bus stations. And I still actually have the box sitting right here, and I never did it because I'm like, I don't, in the end, that seems a little pathetic. But for a while, I'm like, that's the ticket.
Yeah.
Just slather these all over the place. But I think eventually, if you put out enough stupid books, if people want to find a stupid book, they'll find it. At some point, I just have to believe in the big picture that, I'll find the people who might enjoy it.
And they're out there, man, because I'm one of them. And I know where you're coming from, too, because sometimes I'll say something that I think in my head is brilliant, and it will just be crickets wherever I'm at. And then it makes me kind of question myself. But you're like, I can't dumb it down for this audience, I have to stick with it because I'm going to find somebody that thinks it's brilliant.
And that's the thing, because everything is brilliant to somebody. The worst book in the world has fans. And that's why, maybe it's self-delusion, but, I just can't beat myself up too much when the first 5 books had over 80 stories each. So obviously there's going to be at least 10 or 15 that I just think suck out loud in retrospect. I'm like, what was I thinking? But in the big picture, I don't know what people will identify with or what they'll, so you just throw it out there. And I've had people come up and say, oh, I love this story. And I'm like, that's the worst story in the book. But, to each their own, I guess.
whenever you pick up a Lance Manion book, and I'll be completely honest with you here, and I would tell anybody this, I've never picked up a Lance Manion book that I didn't enjoy. You know, like,
Appreciate that.
it's definitely, it's always an enjoyable experience, man. And I love just picking it up, and I can just flip to the middle, because for some reason, anytime even if I'm listening to an album, I always tend to go to the middle, because I feel like that's where the deepest, meat is. And if I flip through a Lance Manion book, no matter what the story is, I'm going to enjoy it. But I want to know, like, where do these stories come from?
Well, first I'll say that after the second book, that's why I stopped in the paperbacks putting page numbers, because I really do want it to be a pick it up anywhere and read a couple stories. It's not meant to be read beginning to end. I couldn't imagine anything more tedious than having to review a Lance Manion book, because it goes all over. It's a perfect bathroom book, or a train ride book, or at the beach book, where you just want to read 2 or 3 stories and then, move on with your day. And then as far as where they come from, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't have those kind of stories run through their head. It's just a matter of bringing a piece of paper and writing it down as you think it, and then just getting it out, writing it, and then walking away from it. I think most people probably could write a book like that if they had the discipline of stopping what they're doing and finding a place to sit down and write it out.
Have you, besides, always having sort of a flair for writing and being interested in it, have you had any type of, like, formal training? I mean, besides, like, English history, or, I'm sorry, like, English class in high school, anything like that?
No, I got my college degree in economics, so, English was never really a fun thing for me. I read, like, P.G. Wodehouse and Douglas Adams and, all these things that had nothing to do with real literature. So, I've never been attracted to the prose side of what I'm doing. In fact, just saying prose, I want to punch myself in the face.
Well, and one more question about the book before we move on to some other topics that I have here. But how exactly, I mean, even though these are self-published books, and you kind of just talk about them just being pieced together on notebook paper and whatnot, whenever you're holding the paperback, I mean, it's a nice quality book, man. Like, how do you go about actually getting these things published into paperback?
Well, the first couple books, I was just a dumbass, and I paid this company, lots of money to put them out as if they, had some secret formula. Nowadays, you can put everything out through, like, CreateSpace, which is run through Amazon, and it costs you nothing. All you have to do is format it and send it in. You've got a book. Smashwords is where I put things out for ebooks, and same type of thing. You can either use people who will format it for you, or you can just do it yourself. And all it is really accumulating a lot of material, taking the time, or partnering up. I have a woman that does my editing now, and she's awesome. Like, she'll read all this stupid shit, and she'll tell me what to, to cut and what to keep, and then she'll correct all my horrible English. And literally, that's it. Then you submit it, they approve it, you're published. Nobody judges anything anymore. If you want to publish, something you've written 10 years ago, in literally a few hours, it can be out there, and then within a few days, people can buy it.
And I think that also kind of attributes to what we were talking about earlier, with the fact that you can just get all of this amazing content for free. The fact that there are websites out there that allow you to just do this for, little to no cost, is because they're making their money from, a lot of independent writers or people like you that are just giving this website numbers, and then big corporations see, hey, this website has numbers, let's pay to get our logo put on there. So they're paying for that while you're getting everything done for free. And it's the same with, like, I see t-shirt companies that are kind of aiming towards podcasts, where they do everything for you. You create a design, and then they sell it for you, they print it for you, they mail it for you, and then they just give you a small percentage of what you would have made. That's kind of where everything's going now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a new world. I mean, it's a great place. I mean, you'll never get rid of, the corporations making money, but they're making a lot less, and they're controlling nothing. Content is now in the hands of you, me, or anybody else. The pretension of authorship needs to go away. You have so many people, pretending to be, these authors and these writers. bullshit. You sit in front, you type down some stupid words, you release them and hope people like them. There's no, magic formula. There's no, godlike abilities. You just have to work your ass off a little and then send it out and hope people like it.
I mean, outside of this new book, I mean, if the new book would be the answer to you, then go with it. But I just wanted to ask you, if someone were to ask you, which I'm sure it's probably been asked before, is like, what is the one Lance Manion book that you would recommend that I read? Is there one that jumps to your head first, or is it just kind of whatever?
Except for the fact that it's unedited, I like the first one, just because that was some of the crudest, off-the-cuff, stream of consciousness stuff, and that's what I've always loved doing. The hardest thing is to avoid going back and rewriting, changing, adding, switching. Back then, it was purely just, I would post it, the next day, I'd write it for the blog, lancemanion.com, post it, and then I wouldn't think about it until it was time to put it in the book. And that first book is just raw, and to me has some of my best stuff, stuff that I'm proud of, some of the phrases and quotes, and, there was something poignant snuck into even the dumbest story, which, maybe it's the first one, but you always like that the best.
And I'm actually, the first book would be Merciful Flush, right? That's the first one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sitting right next to my paperback copy that I have, and I love how in the back you just had just a barrage of quotes that you just kind of took out of the book. And it's sort of like, you read the back of it and it's telling on what's to come inside the book. Like, sometimes at night I lay there and imagine my face with no skin on it. And that's just a quote that's on the back of the book.
It's almost a warning for somebody that if they're trying to, buy the new Dan Brown book or the new Stephen King, that would be the red flag. Like, this is not what I'm looking for.
Or for people like me, hey man, I got to check out what else is inside this thing.
And, it's the easiest way is just to put it on the cover and let people make up their own mind. Because I don't want to, talk down. I love Dan Brown. I read every book he puts out. In fact, in one of the books, I make fun of myself because he uses a word like, and then doesn't stop and congratulate himself for working it in. It's like 15 syllables, some Latin reference that if I ever was able to work it into a story, the whole thing would grind to a halt as I congratulated myself. But he just threw it down and kept plowing along in the book. So obviously he's a lot better at what he does than I am.
So we've talked about the new book, and truly, I highly recommend, if anybody out there likes what we do to some extent, I highly recommend reading, even if you're just a fan of just humorous observations with a little bit of kind of darkness put in every now and then. I highly recommend this book. But I also kind of wanted to get your opinions on, just shit that's going on in the world today outside of entertainment. Like, I'm a stone's throw away from Ferguson, Missouri right now, and I think you're in Pennsylvania, am I correct?
Yeah, outside Philadelphia.
Okay, so, I mean, I'm stuck in this shithole, and, every day I'm just hearing the same thing on every news affiliate. I'm just wondering, like, what somebody else from, a different state is kind of thinking right now.
Well, let me make it clear, I'm not speaking for the citizens of Philadelphia. This is only, the ramblings of an obscure author, and it's very unfashionable right now to be pro-cop. But, I look at this whole thing as just a huge clusterfuck. You have all these people who are, drinking coffee and buttering their croissant in the suburbs, rolling their eyes and saying, oh, how terrible the police brutality, without realizing that the police are the only fucking thing keeping, the rapists and murderers from walking into your house on any given day. So, while I can have sympathy for, all these things, when I see looting like that, I have two words: live ammunition. That's my solution. And if I have to have one more person get really concerned about the militarization of the police, what do you think they're gearing up for? You're going to have Ferguson in every major city coming up. You've got decaying inner cities. You've got rampant illegal immigration. We're not getting tanks and batons, for fun. I think this is just the beginning of what's going to be a really nasty period in, United States history.
And it's so insane to me hearing people all over, even the world, talking about Ferguson, because it's always been part of my lexicon because it's, 10 minutes away, and my girlfriend used to work in an area of Ferguson Florissant that's called Cross Keys, and it has never been a good area. Like, you never think of the Ferguson or Florissant area and think, oh, hey, that's a place where I want to go hang out for a little while. My girlfriend worked in a bank, of all places. So, luckily with this successful podcast, I was able to since get her out of that neighborhood, start her a new life. We haven't looked back since. That had a lot to do with your second interview, getting you on the show, for the second time, but I don't want to go there either. But with this going on in Ferguson, man, like, I even heard Kim Jong-un made a statement about Ferguson, and he's saying that this is making the United States the laughingstock of the world.
Well, and rightly so. I'm not sure where, the United States lost its balls. To sit up there and deal with this, stupidity. Everything you hear from the media is bullshit. They're spinning it and spinning it and spinning it. And I don't understand why. I don't understand why there's this, wanting to inflame, bad race relations and want to inflame the inner cities. Unless they just want to see it all burn. I know that there's got to be a lot of people in Ferguson that are embarrassed and hanging their heads and saying, that this is not representative of our, community.
Oh, most definitely.
All I see when I hear Ferguson, I just see hordes of people kicking in windows and stealing rims and burning things to the ground. And I'm sure that that's not the picture that they want.
Oh, and that's, it's bringing down the entire St. Louis County. Like, it's just making St. Louis in a whole just seem like shit, and it is embarrassing. And to me, whenever people automatically go straight for the race thing, it's not even a race thing to me. It's people that are just looting, store owners just because they feel like they have a right to do it. That's what pisses me off. And I don't care who's doing it. It just pisses me off. I feel
my disappointment comes from shows like The Daily Show and the Colbert Show that have this great audience. They have this great staff of writers, but they don't have the balls to tell the truth. They take the path of least resistance. They want to seem like the good guys, and they're more understanding than thou. And nobody has the balls, to call, what's going on in there. It's really depressing, to be honest, because, especially when you start using comedy as a weapon, that's when you piss people off, or at least comedy people like me. Because comedy is supposed to attack both sides. It's supposed to not care about an agenda. But you've got the Daily Show constantly, attacking the police, constantly attacking any authority figures. And what's the point? They want to see the entire country burn to the ground?
And it's not going to stop in Ferguson, because I feel like with the, everybody is saying, let the media in, like, let them put this on Twitter, let's keep this going, which I fully agree. If people want to get the word out there what's happening, that's perfectly fine. But I think as long as there's a spotlight, it's not going to change. It's going to keep getting worse, that the whole world's eye is on this one area. It's not going to stop.
And get people like me, I would love to go after, authority figures. My whole books are nothing but, trying to take down the authority figures. But give me somebody that I can identify with. When you throw up Michael Brown and Trayvon's, you're not gonna win me over. That doesn't represent, to me, the black community. Those aren't innocent, sweet kids. Those are criminals. And I'm really not going to be, bending over backwards to try to seem, more touchy-feely than now. I'm just not. I want to live in a calm world. I don't want looting. I don't want rioting. I don't want picketing.
What's scary to me is the fact that, I love the fact that everybody at any time can record something with their phone, and then they can throw it up on Twitter, and then it gets a 1,000, retweets, and then it's trending, and everybody knows about it. It goes viral. But the fact that there was a video that just came out the other day, there was a group of cops obviously walking through this fucking war zone, and the one cop, you could tell he was scared, but at one point he was telling people to back up. They would not back up, and he points his gun at them and says, if you don't back up, I will shoot you. And they're like, oh, did you hear that? He's going to shoot me. Next thing you know, that's on Twitter. Everybody's flipping the fuck out, and now this cop is forced to retire because he said that.
Yeah, no one identifies that those are people. They're just like me and you who happen to get into law enforcement. They're trying to do their jobs. And if you're sitting in front of 100 morons who are taunting and screaming and literally breaking the law right in front of you, I would imagine that gets pretty old. But, all the hipsters, want to sit there and pretend like, it's this, the fascist police. Well, when I get pulled over for speeding, I'm right on board, fascist police. But at the end of the day, I was going 70 in a 45. Okay, I was being a dick. I take my ticket like a man and I pay it. I'm not going to sit there and start crying and whining about it. The real comedy in life is stuff that isn't written. I could never write as funny a bit as I was listening to, again, WPRB. They had this guy who, played rap. And right after this happened, he was on this, diatribe. And he came up with his new rules for young men. And he starts ranting and raving as if it was earth-shattering. And rule number one was don't commit crime. And he said it in like this self-important way, like it was a breakthrough. Then he's like, be respectful to the police. Don't don't attack the police. Like all these things that every single normal person heard from their parents when they were growing up. It's not some secret. It's not racial. It's not religious. It's not sex driven. It's just every single kid was taught, those are the police, do what they say, you can't break the law. If they ask you a question, you answer it, you're respectful. The ranting and raving, I was literally laughing out loud as I was driving going, someone needs for him to sit down and listen to this and realize how stupid he's being. Those are just basic things you do in a civilization. And if culturally you're so fucked up that you can't piece those simple things together, then we are all definitely screwed. Yeah, and unfortunately, now we're in a culture where, that there are no boundaries. You can't see, you look like, you're old-fashioned if you stick up for the police. But, I'm definitely not jumping on that bandwagon.
And I mean, I'm not. I don't love the cops. I'm a supporter of them doing their job. That's what they're supposed to do. And I know full-heartedly that if I were to resist arrest whenever I got pulled over, and I was in handcuffs, I would have gotten my ass beaten, and it wouldn't have been any different. If I would have reached for this cop's gun, I would have got shot. And if anybody watches Cops, or as I like to call it, white trash and trouble, I think that's what they should call it. It's
one of the greatest shows ever, by the way.
Oh, White Trash and Trouble, I love it, dude. And it's people like that are getting beaten up, and it doesn't even seem like it's a race thing to me at all, man. If you resist a cop, they have the right to kick your ass. That's what they do.
That's the racism to me, is when people are judging the scene by the color of people's skins. I don't care if a looter is white, black, Chinese, American Indian. If he's walking out with a flat screen, wing him. Let him know that we're a nation of laws. And for everybody to see everything go through a prism of race, it's just retarded. I mean, we're heading down such a wrong path.
The whole situation scares me, but I just wanted to hear someone from a different part of America. It's not like you're too far away, but I've just been living in this shit forever. I can go right down the street to the gas station and talk to the attendant about it, and just wanted to see what someone else thought about it. But
I think they need to spend some time and interview people who don't have that opinion. And because, you would think that Ferguson is lockstep anti-police, pro Michael Brown is an innocent, on his knees with his hands in the air. And I think that, I think if they were to interview other people from that community and they were to be honest, I think that would go a long way in settling. Like you said, race relations are nowhere near as bad as the racial hustlers want to make them to be. My black friends they didn't come up and punch me in the face because of Ferguson. It was awkward, some conversations, because I'm an asshole and I say what I think. But that's really the only hope we have for making any of this better. Even if you say something stupid or if you say something wrong, at least you're talking. At least you're discussing it.
Oh, and to be fair, whenever you're an asshole about anything, that'll make any conversation tense. I've had tense conversations with my mom just because I have a tendency to be an asshole about things.
Well, in the book, I write things that are particularly assholey for the purpose of starting a discussion or at least making the reader think about something. We're so afraid of offense. People don't want to get offended, and I think it's healthy to be offended. It's healthy to have, a conversation in your own head about what you believe. because it probably changes daily and changes with every news story you get. And if all you get is the horseshit from MSNBC or Fox, one way or the other, I think you become a duller person. I think you're less tolerant of other people's opinions. Sometimes you have to hear stupid shit just to rattle something loose in your head.
Man, and I had one point there too, Lance, and I forgot what it was, damn it.
See, I don't have any points. That makes it a lot easier to talk.
I bet it does.
Rambling.
Oh, shit. Well, I think I'm going to have to let that one go, man, because I think it's gone now.
You can always edit it back in.
Hey, that's right. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to edit it.
If I were you, I would be constantly peppering all the broadcasts with these brilliant quotes, as if I knew them. But I would just go back later and read them, aloud, and then make it look like I slipped them into the conversation.
Use a different tone of voice. Just cut Lance off mid-sentence and then come in with a deeper voice.
And then everybody will be picturing you with a pipe, as you sit back and by the fireplace.
Oh, man, that's a great idea, dude. I really need to do that.
That and sound effects.
Sound effects. I have dabbled in sound effects. I feel like if I would need to have just a big soundboard in front of me where I can just push these buttons, because I feel like after it's not in that moment, then the kind of cachet is lost. And then whenever I go back to and listen to it, I can't find just the perfect point.
Well, in a way, that's why I write like I do. Most of the times you go back, you just screw it up anyway.
Well, let's move on to one more topic, because I can't. We're just a couple of white guys, I mean, well, I think you're Native American, right? Or you're some type of Asian.
My audience.
Okay. Last time we had you on the show, we were celebrating, I think it was the first ever Have Sex with an Ugly Person Day.
Yes, April 2nd.
Yeah, that was the inaugural day. Since there has been another one, and I just kind of wanted to know, how did that one turn out, and are we looking at a third one coming up?
If you thought the first event was greeted with apathy, you should have seen the second one. Now, it was funny, and I did a couple interviews about it, wrote it up. It's really just a chance for obscure publications to rip me and make fun of me for such a horrible idea, which they don't realize that's exactly what I'm doing. That's why I'm doing it for. I did have somebody do a one of these e-television knockoffs, where they were discussing it on a panel, and one of them said he knew for a fact that I was a model.
Well, hey man, that's good publicity though, dude.
I'm like, well, first of all, I love it, because then all the female readers are going to picture this hunky Lance Manion. But, I mean, for him to say something like that was so stupid. I don't think they make a product. Maybe I'm a mask model. Even
if the ladies see you and they're expecting, like, a model and you don't quite meet their standards, hey, at least you have 6 books to put in front of them and say, I've written all these books, ladies.
6, soon to be 10.
Exactly. So, man, I think just having one book, if I could just show people a fucking book that I put together and it looks professional, I think that's, probably enough for most ladies.
Yeah, their standards are pretty low.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Well, Lance, if you can believe it, man, we've been talking for an hour at this point.
I know. I feel like we haven't even started the real questions, that this is, just the introductory banter.
Oh, I know. And that's how most of my interviews feel like, really. People are like, well, when are you going to start asking the questions? Well, that's all that I have.
That's good. That way it doesn't feel dull or forced.
Right. No, and that's the best way to do it. And I feel like we have hit all the topics here, man. I mean, we went over your new book and some of my favorite stories and quotes out of it. We've tackled racism, which I think is a huge problem.
We solved that nicely. I'm sure people will appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And doesn't it suck that, like, we're speaking heartfelt and we're not singling anyone out, but there are going to be people that are really angry about it. It's just, there's just so much anger out there.
Good, fuck them. If people want to be angry, I guess maybe that's the first step. But just don't be stupidly angry. Think it through. Don't throw bricks through, the front of shopping centers and just realize everybody's just out there doing the best they can. That store you just burnt to the ground, that was somebody's business that they worked their life to build up. That cop that you just shot, that guy has a family. He's just a schmuck like we are. Mm-hmm. Nobody's perfect. Are there asshole cops? Of course. Are there asshole criminals? They're all asshole criminals. Have some sympathy for your fellow man, for the love of whatever you love.
There's definitely a lot of problems in the world today. I think we can both agree that if the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame gets burned down tomorrow, no one's going to be crying for it to be rebuilt. I think that's one thing people can take away from this.
That needs to be the first step. White people and black people holding hands together, throwing Molotov cocktails through that piece of shit in Cleveland. You want to talk about a kumbaya moment? That'll bring people together.
Well, if you ever get that set up and you have a celebration of that, I would like to be there live, and I'm going to bring my microphone. I want to share that moment.
Maybe I need like April 3rd. April 2nd, have sex with an ugly person day. Then April 3rd, we burn down the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Or you can find, yeah, definitely. And then every year you can find a new, different bullshit, museum or company or anything like that, and just spread the hate to them too.
Yeah, I come off pretty angry in this. It's, I'm really not an angry person. I don't think anyway.
The thing I've realized about that is you never get for most people, you don't get a beautiful idea and like, hey, I'm going to share that with my friends. You get fucking pissed about something, you go on a rant, and you're like, people have to know about this. That's how I am, at least.
Well, and it's probably a lot more dangerous for you because you're on the air, and as soon as you say it, it's done and it's out there.
Yeah.
If you talk enough, if anybody talks enough, they're going to say something offensive, and most of the time they probably don't even believe it themselves. That's why no one says a word. They're so scared of saying something wrong. I think people just say something wrong, say something stupid, offend people. People need to get thicker skins and open up their ears, and all these stupid problems and miscommunications will go away.
And if it doesn't, we can just say, hey, it's just comedy. It's all comedy.
Wisdom from the guy who wrote The Ball Washer. Just what the world needs. I wonder what his opinion on race relations is. Let's ask him. He clearly is such a serious guy.
Well, that's why I wanted to tackle it with you. I thought, who better? Who better than the author of Homo Says Whaticus?
Yeah, I mean, that hard-hitting, author, that intellect.
Well, Lance, I've kept you for over an hour at this point. I would really like to thank you for coming back, and I mean,
thank you. I appreciate being able to pimp the new book.
Hey man, no problem. I would be sharing it even if you weren't on the podcast, because I really, like I said, I have not picked up a Lance Manion book that I have not enjoyed. And for you to give it away for free as an ebook download on lancemanion.com, why wouldn't you check it out? Just go do it.
And then maybe I'll do a book signing in Ferguson.
I think the Barnes & Noble's down now, but
it's super.
Yeah, but you could maybe just set up shop on the street. There seems to be a lot of people there that might like it. I don't know.
Then I can contact that agent because I'm famous, because I would be that obscure author that was beaten to death in Ferguson at his book signing.
So, Lance, I really hope we'll do this again. I'm sure we will at this point. I mean, you've been the most returned guest on CSP, and you're one of our favorites to have on, man. So thanks so much for the time.
Thank you. And anytime you're short a guest, my Skype.
Oh yeah.
So, anytime you want, just let me know.
Awesome. Yeah, the audio quality, I'm sure, sounds a lot better. And whenever I'm actually in the works of flying out to Germany here sometime within the next few months, and maybe Ty and I will sit down at the same computer and we'll do a live CSP with Lance Manion, just like old times.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
All right. Well, we'll put that down on the calendar. Until then, guys, go to lancemanion.com. Check out The Song Between Her Legs for a free ebook download. Or, hell, go all out and buy the paperback for $9.99. There's nothing more satisfying than holding a paperback book. And I'm sure Lance will even write his old signature on it maybe if you request it.
Yeah, I would probably do almost anything to get you to buy a paperback, because then I actually make some money on it.
And there's nothing wrong with making a couple bucks doing something you love.
No, one day I could break even.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back after this. And just thanks for coming on, Lance. Really appreciate it.
Thank you much.